What's up guys, my name is Liam and today we're going to be taking a look at the DAREU A950 Pro. This is the Magnesium version. I recently added this to my top 5 ambi mouse list, so I've obviously been really enjoying it. But is this going to be the perfect gaming mouse for you? Let's check it out. Before we get started, I want to let you know this was sent out to me by metkeys.com, but everything you'll be hearing in this video today are going to be my own words and my own opinions. I'll do a quick rotation on the box. That way, if you want to pause the video and take a look at any of the details that are listed on here or shown, that you'll be able to do so. And as we remove the cover, typical stuff, we do have the mouse sitting here wrapped up at the top. And once you pull it out of the packaging, here's what it looks like on the top and on the bottom. This does come included with the 4K receiver and it's sitting right here underneath the mouse. And on the bottom, they do provide you with a USB-C cable. You do get this real premium storage bag. And then they have this envelope underneath everything with some goodies inside. And it does come included with an instruction manual. It also comes with a set of the premium grips, and then also comes with an extra set of these larger PTFE style skates installed. It does come with the 4 corners on there. Pretty much the same stuff as the other A950 Pro, the plastic version. You do have your power button over here to the left. You switch it up to turn it on and enable the 4K dongle. You can also switch it down to enable Bluetooth mode. This does come with Bluetooth, or leave the switch right there in the middle to turn it off. And then you do have the DPI button over here on the right side. These look to be the exact same PTFE skates that do come on the plastic version. And as I'd mentioned in that video, these do feel very premium. They do feel really quick, and I have not had any desire to swap out and feel like I need any other skates. They've been working really good. And one of the first things that stood out to me when I first started using the Magnesium version is the coating that comes on this is absolutely S+ tier. When it comes to the switches, this is using the Kailh black Mambas, and they honestly really do feel pretty good. They're a little bit heavier in the Huano blue shell pink dots, but the tensioning on the switches here on my copy, they're just mint. There's like no pre-travel, almost no post-travel. There's literally like no play on the buttons, no teetering, no rocking. So just a great experience. And it's the same thing over here on mouse button 2. Almost no pre-travel, almost no post-travel. Typically with these Magnesium mice, when you get them out of the box, they feel really solid. They loosen up a little bit over time. This has done so just slightly, but overall the tensioning and everything on the switches still feels on point. Another thing that I've noticed on the Magnesium version over the plastic version is I just kind of feel like the clicks from front to back, since Magnesium is a harder, tougher, more rugged material, they do feel just a little bit more consistent all the way from the very front of the switch all the way to the back. The rubber on the scroll wheel also feels great. It has this really cool design on here. It is very grippy. It does have a little bit more of quiet steps when you're actually scrolling the scroll wheel, but they are nice and defined. I have not had any issues with the scroll myself personally. And the center click on the scroll button, it is very easy to spam. They also nailed the side buttons. They feel incredibly premium. There's like no pre-travel on them at all. Almost very minimal to no post-travel. Once it clicks in, has a pretty solid stop back there. You can get just a tiny bit of play here going left to right if you're trying to wobble the side buttons, but nothing bad at all. Nothing that I personally notice in game. And same thing on the front side button, just incredibly consistent, like almost no pre-travel, very little to almost no post-travel. So let's go ahead and drop a sound test so you can see what the clicks sound like, and we'll do an overview on the build quality feeling. Looks like I got it coming in at approximately 54.8 grams. And the front to back feels flawless, and the same goes for the left to right as well. I've already covered the software in the plastic version of the A950 Pro. It's just the same software. One really cool thing to note is once I did set this mouse up and take it out of the box for the very first time, it actually brought over the settings that I had for the plastic A950. So automatically set the 4K performance, automatically set my DPI and everything the exact same. And in case you missed in the first video, just really quick overview, this does allow you to adjust the bounce setting. It allows you to drop it down to 1 millisecond. It enables you to turn off motion sync or leave it on in the software. And then last but not least, you can come over here to this tab. It allows you to adjust your DPI, and here is where you can set the liftoff distance, and you can also change the pulling rate. This does come included with a 300 milliamp hour battery in it, and I do use my mice all the time. I mostly work. I usually game a couple hours a day, so it can vary. If you're gaming all the time, all day for like 8-10 hours straight, I imagine you get about a day and a half use out of it. But even with heavy use, if you're using it mostly for working, but still gaming a couple hours a day, I usually get about 2-3 days out of the battery life myself. This is also using the Comp X firmware solution for the 4K, and on my system I have it configured perfectly. Everything's been running absolutely flawless for me. I have tested this out on different mouse pads. I personally have not come across any issues with the performance while using it. So let's get one of the biggest questions out of the way that I'm sure most people are gonna be watching this video for. What is the difference between the magnesium version versus the plastic version? If you've watched my review on the plastic version, the build quality on this is pretty much perfect. But I honestly thought I was going to prefer the plastic version over the magnesium, but to be completely honest with you guys, this plastic version, it feels great. There's like no pre-travel on the switches, but with plastic, as you can see here, the switch does kind of have a little bit of a bend to it. It's not a flatter style switch that you see on something like the Lamzu Atlantis Mini. So if you were to get really rough with this, you know how it is. Plastic is just a softer material. It bends, and I don't feel like the switch is as consistent with the plastic when you get down in the front compared to the back. Now the overall click implementation from front to back on the plastic version, it still feels great, but plastic, it just bends easier, it moves around easier, even though this has like no play to it, and the build quality on it's really solid. As you can see here, if I was to really get into this, it does kind of have a little bit of play to it, and it just feels more solid with the magnesium version. There's like no bend on the switches. It's more consistent no matter where you press the button from. There's less play on here. It just feels a lot tighter. If I were to push on here really hard and try and get any rocking or teetering on, there's like no movement. So for me personally, I do kind of like just how this feels a little bit more tensioned. It feels a little tighter. It feels a little snappier. It just overall feels a little bit more premium to me. And then probably the biggest thing that stands out between these two for me is that the coating, as I'd already mentioned, that does come on the magnesium version, this is just an absolute god tier coating. The plastic version does come with a coating as well, but it doesn't feel nearly as good or premium. As you can see here, I do kind of have a little bit of oilier skin, and even though this felt a little grippy at first, I kind of felt like with my oilier skin, it did get kind of a little bit slippery over time the more I was using it, especially during long gaming sessions and stuff like that. So that's why I went ahead and threw these grips on here. Now these grips work great, they're really premium, but my personal preference, I obviously would prefer to have a more premium coating on here and not use the grips. So it would be really cool to see if they were to change up the coating on the plastic version down the line in the future. I'm not sure if they would necessarily do that or not, just keep it exclusive to the magnesium version of this mouse. But overall, I really feel like that both of these are great options. Obviously, if you have a budget and you're not able to afford this mouse, it's way more expensive, the magnesium version, I would still highly suggest checking out this mouse. I have really enjoyed it a lot. But again, I do feel like the magnesium version, it honestly just feels a little bit more premium, a little bit tighter, and again, the coating, it just feels better in my hands and for my game style. There is one last thing I did want to mention about the actual holes that are on top of the mouse. Obviously, the plastic version doesn't have the holes. I know a lot of people would prefer that over a mouse with holes on the top. And I want to show you guys really quick what I've kind of noticed with using this mouse quite a bit lately is on the Razer Viper Mini Signature Edition, everybody was dreading these holes when this mouse was announced. But if you look closely, the holes kind of do just come down the middle of the mouse. They've done a really good job at leaving these sides over here pretty solid. So for me personally, once I've gotten used to this mouse, especially since it is a smaller mouse, it does feel a bit shorter. If you were to look here at them next to each other, A950 Pro is a bit bigger, longer. So I do kind of feel like the holes do make a little bit more of a difference when you're holding the A950 Pro. When I am not gaming with this mouse, if I'm just editing videos or whatever, sometimes I'll mess around with my grip style, do some type of fingertip, whatever. I'm not really paying attention, right? And one thing I have noticed is this hole that's over here on the side that my pinky does tend to fall in here when I'm just messing around with it and browsing it normally. Just something that I have noticed with using this a lot. I figured I'd bring it up to you guys. And then one last thing is these two holes right here. I do feel like depending on how you grip the mouse, that I do notice my thumb kind of sinking into them. And I do kind of feel like I do notice them being there at time to time. Again, when I am doing a gaming session or whatever, I'm usually zoned in, focused on the game. I don't notice it too much, but it's just something I figured that I would point out that from time to time I do notice. If I were to have designed this mouse myself or wanted to offer any feedback, I probably wouldn't have put this hole here, and I would have not have put these two holes here, again just because it's a bigger mouse, kind of fills up your hands a little bit more. But again, not a major deal breaker or anything, just something I figured I'd bring up to you guys that I noticed. And then when it comes to the shape, I have been really enjoying this shape. I've compared it to a bunch of other things in my previous videos. I did a video where I compared it to the Logitech G Pro Superlight in my Logitech G Pro Superlight 2 video. So if you're interested in checking that out, go look into that. I actually compared it to the plastic version, but they're the exact same shape. And then in the A950 Pro version that was plastic, that video, I also threw it up against the Razer Viper Mini Signature Edition. So again, if you're interested in seeing those shape comparisons, go and check those videos out. As you can see here on the bottom, it kind of does have a flatter profile on the sides, and there isn't a whole lot of curves going on. So it is a lot more similar in that sense to the Logitech G Pro Superlight. But when it comes to the top of the profile on the mouse, it does have a softer curve profile from the front to the back. So the G Pro Superlight, it does feel a little bit taller, and I do feel like it sits up a little higher in the rear, whereas this feels just a little bit flatter, so in between the G Pro Superlight, but it's not as flat feeling in the back. It does stick up a little bit higher in the back, give you a little more support than something like the Razer Viper V2 Pro. But I do feel like this shape does feel very comfortable. As you can see here, has pretty soft curves, nothing too aggressive, has a slight curve from the bottom to the top, and I really do feel like it has pretty flat sides. They sit up pretty high. I feel like this mouse works really well with all types of grip styles, whether it's fingertip, a type of relaxed claw, and it even works well for palm if you have the proper hand size. All right, so based off of feedback I've gotten from you guys in the community, I've been getting requests to compare the shape to other offerings out there on the market I haven't already compared them to in previous videos, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Starting out with the A950 Pro versus the Vaxee XE Wireless. I do feel like all around that the Vaxee XE Wireless does feel like just a little bit of a larger mouse versus the A950 Pro. As you can see on the bottom profile, the Vaxee feels just a little bit wider, and it does have a little bit more aggressive curves going on the sides, where the A950 feels a little bit more flat. Coming over to the rear profile, again, even at the top, the XE Wireless does feel just a little bit wider in the hands. It feels a little bit more flat, and it does taper off to the sides just a little less aggressively. And finally, on the Vaxee, it does have a more centralized hump that sticks up higher, and it does curve down to the rear and to the front more aggressively. So you definitely do notice that mid hump on it a lot more. And as you can see on the A950 Pro, it just has a bit of a softer curve from front to back, and it just makes it feel like it's a little bit flatter. And next up, when comparing it to the Attack Shark X3, both of these mice do have pretty distinct differences from one another. Starting out at the bottom, as you can see, the Attack Shark X3 is a much more narrow mouse, and it does have more aggressive curves on the side. On the top, the X3 feels a lot more narrow, and it has a more rounded top end, tapering off more aggressively from the top mid hump down to the sides. And finally, one thing I do notice on the Attack Shark X3 is I do feel like the hump does feel a bit more aggressive, that mid hump there. As you can see, it does fall off to the rear more aggressively. All around, it just feels a little shorter, a little bit smaller, whereas on the A950 Pro, it has the slower taper from front to back, making it feel all around just wider, longer, and just a bit bigger than the X3. Next up, when comparing it to the HPC01M Pro, they do have pretty flat sides, not a whole lot of curve going on there, but clearly the Incott is a much more narrow mouse. And the same thing comes over on the rear, as you can see with the curve profile from the top to the sides, with the Incott just feeling like a much more narrow mouse even at the top. Though the height on both of these isn't too far apart from one another, as you can see on the A950 Pro, it does extend out longer, so it feels like a bit of a wider and longer mouse in the hands. All right, and finally, we're going to be throwing it up against the Finalmouse Starlight-12, and this is the medium size. I would say that the overall feeling of these two is pretty similar. They are really close to one another. I do feel like on the Starlight-12 Medium that it does have just a little bit slightly more aggressive curves on the side, and it does feel a little bit more narrow in the hands. On the rear profile, you can see the A950 sticks up a little bit higher, and it does have a little bit more aggressive curves to the side, where I do feel like on the top of the Starlight-12, it feels just a little bit more flat from left to right. And then finally, looking at both these from the sides, you can see they're not that far apart from one another. These both kind of have a little bit of a flatter feeling. I do feel like on the A950 Pro, it does stick up a little bit higher, whereas the very top of the Starlight-12 Medium feels just a little bit more flat, but then it also does kind of taper off to the rear a little bit more aggressively, where this kind of has a slower taper. Again, all around it just feels a little bit wider, a little bit longer, and a little bit taller than the Starlight-12 Medium. All right guys, so that wraps things up on the A950 Pro, and again, all around this thing feels really solid, it feels really great, and I've been really enjoying my time gaming with it. So if you have any questions or feel like I left anything out, please let me know down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed watching this video and you're interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please drop this video a like and subscribe to my channel. I've left affiliate links for some of these mice down in the description below in case you're interested in picking any of them up and supporting the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.